We got any Viagra?
Well, here your stomach goes. There you go.
All right. I'm Douglas Campbell. I'm running for governor of Michigan. I am a member of the Green Party of Michigan. I'm also a member of the Green Party of the United States. I'm a residual member of the Green Party USA, and I'm an affiliate member of the Green Parties of Illinois and South Africa. I am by profession a registered professional engineer. I've been doing the work for about 20 years. I've been registered now for about 6. Been on a lot of interesting projects, including a couple of green projects, one of which was a solar-powered race car. One of which is Chrysler's zero-emission electric minivan, which was canceled, and so was I, by the Daimler takeover of 1999, 98, I forget, it's been a while. I've also been on a couple of neutral projects like aircraft instrumentation and tomography, and on some definitely non-green projects like nuclear power. Yes, I have been a nuclear engineer. I've also been a Republican, which you can see in my campaign literature. That's not it, too many pockets. I was a Republican activist in Chicago in the 70s and early 80s, which may sound strange to be a Green now, but in Chicago they have kind of a topsy-turvy political system where the Republicans are actually the loyal opposition, at least until they get a toehold, which they still haven't, and may never. I fell out of electoral activity in about 1982 or so, and I switched over to working on direct action, worked with organizations like the American Civil Liberties Union, the National Abortion and Reproductive Rights Action League, the Computer Professionals for Social Responsibility, which started out life opposing Star Wars, but evolved into some other issues, including digital privacy, things like that. Fell out of activism entirely. I never stopped voting, but I was beginning to sympathize with the people who had. And then in 2000, I saw Ralph Nader at the Magic Stick in Detroit, and I became an activist again, this time for the Green Party. I stopped backstage to ask how I could help out a little bit, and they offered me the statewide campaign coordinator position. I was a little intimidated by that, and in retrospect, I probably could have handled it, but at the time I sure didn't think I could. I asked for 24 hours to think about it, and in those 24 hours they gave Joe Saxena the job, and he did a very good job of it. I was only the Tri-County Detroit area campaign coordinator for Ralph Nader and Winona LaDuke.
Oh, gee.
It's been a long, strange trip, hasn't it? Not that this looks like a Dead concert or anything. So that's where I've been. Then after the 2000 election, the Green Party started falling apart. And I started thinking that it was time that we look for something to revitalize it and provide that same cohesive, sort of a star in the east that we could march toward. And I started looking around for a governor candidate for 2002. Actually, I started looking around for somebody else, started twisting arms and did not succeed. In April, we had a fundraising lunch with Ralph Nader, and he started twisting arms also. He's kind of hard to say no to, you know. And I thought about it for a little while, and finally, after having my arm twisted in April, I filed in August of 2001 for this office. I hesitated long and hard, and finally filed after learning that David Bonnier had voted against the CAFE standard, the Fuel Economy for Motor Vehicles Act that came up in Congress, which would, if it went through, mean that everybody burns less gasoline, everybody puts less CO2 into the air, everybody puts less money into the oil companies, and somehow he found a downside to it. Hell, I don't know what the downside is. Maybe that it would make the American car companies compete with the Japanese for building and offering better technology. I don't know, maybe he thinks that's a downside. So anyway, I filed, and suddenly, And I'll be honest with you, I filed because I thought the Green Party ought to have a governor candidate to coalesce around because it would revitalize the sagging spirits of the party. I don't know if you remember summer of 2001, but we were kind of wandering in the wilderness that year. And I didn't think I was qualified, but I figured, well, if nobody else is doing it, I will. Then I got invited to a number of candidate forums, and I mean, honestly, all of you who are not running are missing out on a lot of fun. How often do you get invited to stand up between the Attorney General on one side and the Lieutenant Governor on the other side and tell the assembled audience that they're both clueless? And now they are, which makes it easier. But you're really missing out on an opportunity here. Anyway, I attended a number of these candidate forums, started doing homework. I started studying election law, which 2 years ago you never would have convinced me that I'd ever do. Started studying all the state issues. I've had inquiries from the Helmetless Motorcycle Riders Association about my policies there. I've had inquiries from the Animal Attorney Association of Michigan and all kinds of people you would never have expected had you been asked to outline what the governor has to respond to. But during the course of this research and during the course of appearing at these various candidate forums, I found out, much to my surprise, that I'm better qualified than half the field out there, which sort of undermined my faith in the election system and its ability to weed out people like Dick Posthumus, who, quite frankly, comes across like Dan Quayle light. All of the charm, but none of that annoying intellectual depth and substance. So in addition to being able to do some good things for Michigan, to promote sustainable energy, to promote more equitable tax structure, to almost entirely do away with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, whose mission, as far as I can tell, is to give away tax money to corporations who are the funders of the big campaigns. I think it's also a good opportunity to just take the system and put your thumb in its eye. I've already pledged many times to fire the first shot against the drug war in Michigan, that I will write an executive pardon for everybody convicted of simple possession of controlled substances. That is within the governor's authority and does not require the cooperation of the legislature to do that. You can do that as one sole person and not have to build a coalition of 99% opposition party members. You can just do it. Well, that ought to piss a few people off. But then suddenly they're going to find out that when you pardon 10,000 people who aren't really criminals after all, that you're no longer paying $10,000 per head to house them, and suddenly you've got $100 million in the budget that doesn't have to be spent on a useless purpose anyway. I think we're going to find a few coalition partners after doing that. I think we need to look at equity in taxation. Right now, if you buy gasoline, you pay a higher tax than diesel fuel for the roads. Well, why are all the little people subsidizing the trucking business? I think we ought to put that on parity. Yep. I think we ought to put parity between the cigarette tax, which is currently $1.25 a pack, and the marijuana tax, which currently isn't defined at all. I think we ought to put $1.25 tax parity with tobacco on marijuana sales. Now, admittedly, there's initially going to be some difficulty collecting this tax. But the other thing it's going to do, hey, they convict, 1 minute, oh hell.
Move to extend.
They convicted Al Capone on tax evasion. So, there may be some opportunities, but what it will do is tell people, first of all, look, we're missing some opportunities in collecting some taxes, and second of all, it's going to provide some legitimacy to marijuana. It's not a crime, it doesn't do a lot of harm. One of the things the current drug law does is lump all drugs into the legal drugs and the illegal drugs. And from a public health standpoint, we should not be saying that marijuana is the same as heroin or ketamine. Heroin causes tremendous addiction problems. It causes a lot of overdose problems. When was the last time you ever heard of anybody who overdosed and died on grass? It just doesn't happen. Ketamine is an animal sedative anesthetic which causes psychosis in humans. The FDA has banned its use in humans based on a few trials that went very badly, and today it's a recreational drug of choice. And our current attitude of lumping all the illegal drugs together tells people who are thinking about experimenting with drugs that it's all the same as grass, and there's no real reason not to. You're the timekeeper, aren't you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Get the hook.